Hello everyone, I've been given the go-ahead to get the meeting started. Welcome to tonight's Communities Committee meeting. My name is Neil Lawrence and I'm Vice Chair of this committee, and it's my honour and privilege to be sitting in Councillor Jabba Riaz's chair. And just to say, Jabba, in case you're watching, thinking of you very much during this extremely stressful time for you and many other people. I have some instructions, information to read out this evening, so if you could bear with me while I read those out. So indeed, welcome to everyone who's here, councillors and members of the public. This is a public meeting. Members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photography or photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is being recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds in this building, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Please do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you've left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Let the phone go there. I'm just going to have a look at my own. If you could ensure that it's on silent or switched off, that'd be wonderful. I remember how to switch off my own phone. Just bear with me. Okay. So, yes, so Councillor Riaz has obviously sent his apologies, and others may not be here. So are there any substitutes?
Yes, we do have one substitute. That's Robin Norfolk. She's here tonight for Jabba Riaz.
Thank you very much, Julian. And are there any declarations of interest from members of the committee? I have two. Councillor Altaf, first of all.
Yes, agenda number 9, declare interest of a professional landlord private.
Okay, thank you. That will be noted. Thank you. Councillor Petrovsky.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to declare my membership of Worcestershire Interfaith Forum very proud. Thank you.
Rhea?
Trustee.
Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you. I am a member of Purtiswell Leisure Centre.
Okay, might be a few more declarations of interest in that point.
Hopefully.
No, everyone else is about as fit as I am. Okay. Fantastic. Now, the next item on the agenda is public participation, but I've been asked to slightly rejig the order of things, but I will seek the committee's approval first of all. Are you happy for the presentation from a member of CAB, or it used to be CAB, I believe, Worcester Municipal Housing? Are you happy for that presentation to be given first before public participation? I'm just looking for nods. Yeah. Fantastic. So may I invite Geraint Thomas to present?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us. Just to confirm my role this evening, I'm actually the Vice Chair of Worcester Municipal Charities, and I'm presenting in that capacity today. But I'm also the nominated trustee by Worcester Citizens Advice, Citizens Advice Worcester and Herefordshire, whose Smart Move scheme managed the 68 flats for the homeless alms houses for Worcester Municipal Charities. So I do have two roles, but I'm presenting as Worcester Municipal Charities tonight. So just to clear that up. All members have been given a history of Worcester Municipal Charities. That's this document. And also the presentation. I just wish to apologise that I am on a tight time limit today because I was going to get a later train. I actually live in Hereford, but they have all been cancelled. West Midlands trains have all been cancelled, so there's only one train available at 7:39 with Great Western. So I'm rushing somewhat. Just firstly to inform everybody that Worcester Municipal Charities trustees is managed by a board of 17 trustees. 4 are nominated from the main beneficiaries, so that's Mags Day Centre, Citizens Advice Worcester, and Worcester Community Trust and Tudor House Trust, and they are nominated for 3 years. 9 are independent trustees who are elected for 5 years, and 4 are nominated by Worcester City Council. They serve for 4 years, and they're currently Tracy Biggs, Jill Desera, Richard Bourne, and Roger Knight. And obviously, I've handed out the history. Does anyone have any questions on the history? Because that's all hopefully self-explanatory, been explained in the booklet. So moving on to the next slide. I'm here today to talk about the Worcester Municipal Almshouses Flats for the Homeless, which comprise 68 units of accommodation, comprising 1 or 2 person almshouse flats. They're all 64 are 1-bedroom flats across the listed developments, and we also have a 4-person HMO, House of Multiple Occupation. If councillors members look at pages 8 and 9, all of the developments which are listed there are pictured and the dates of when they opened. Next slide, please. How were the next slide is about how were the flats funded. The flats have been were developed by Worcester Municipal Charities. Worcester Municipal Charities are an almshouse charity. They had 32, they still have, and they have always had 32 traditional almshouses, which is sheltered accommodation, 7 units flats at Barclays Court and 25 at New Street. Those are both part-time warden control and have 24-hour cover. And they are for people who've lived in Worcester, are retired or near retirement age, entitled to receive housing benefits, and their present accommodation is inadequate or not suitable for their need. But in the around 2010, Worcester Municipal Charities looked to develop other property in Worcester, and they developed flats as a result of the sale of commercial property and the redevelopment of existing sites. So looking at developing flats above commercial property in the city centre. And the first 2 which were developed were 9 Sansom Place and 16 and 17 St Swithin Streets. Those were developed entirely funded by Worcester Municipal Charities. However, Worcester Municipal Charities, in partnership with Smartlets managing those flats, found it was a successful model which helped fund their activities for funding charities in Worcester and also individuals in need. So they became a registered with Homes England to look at developing other flats in the city centre. And from 2013, they planned the listed developments, which were opened as stated in the history at pages 8 and 9. Next slide. Because Worcester Municipal Charity is an almshouse charity, they can only provide almshouse licences to applicants for the relief in need. And the flats that have been developed with Homes England are charged rent at 80% of the private sector rent. Licensees are appointed as beneficiaries of the charity. As a result of that, they are assessed with regard to their ongoing financial need and the need for affordable rehousing because they can't afford private sector rents or deposits or rent in advance. So they can't be granted a tenancy and they're therefore given a licence. However, as if people are still entitled to stay there within the benefit of the charity, Worcester Municipal Charity wants people to make these as their homes and the developments have been based on that basis. Next slide, please. Who manages the almshouse flats? The almshouse flats are managed by Smartlets, which is part of a Citizens Advice Worcester. Smartlets is a social lettings agency. Many members will be aware that Citizens Advice Worcester do have access to the private rented sector scheme called Smart Move, which is a deposit scheme to allow people to access private rented accommodation. That's the single homeless who, unless they have a vulnerability, they don't have priority. So Smart Lets was looked to develop that, to have a social lettings agency to try and increase units of accommodation for the single homeless in the city. It was developed from 2009, and Worcester Municipal worked in partnership with the first two developments to make those available for the single homeless in Worcester, and it's developed from there. Smart Lets is part of Citizens Advice Worcester. It's a member of the Property Redress Scheme, which is an independent third-party organisation. So they have experience as a property agent. As managing agent for Worcester Municipal Charity, Smart Lets offers comprehensive services to the homeless from their city centre offices in Lowesmore, and I'll go into that in a minute. We at Smart Lets, we look to house people in self-contained accommodation on the basis they are tenancy ready, they are ready to sustain that accommodation. We support them to settle and sustain that accommodation. Next slide, please. So how do we assess, why do we assess, what do we assess and why do we assess those people to move into the flats? Well, when the flats were gradually developed and eventually the largest developments, Shore Street, was opened, we worked with Worcester City Council to develop a local lettings policy with regard to these properties. So the letting policy for these almshouses has been agreed with Worcester City. It was originally developed in 2021-22, and the final version for all flats was agreed in October 2022. So Worcester Municipal Charities and the local lettings policies look to assess people suitability on the basis that they are single people or a member of a childless couple. So childless couple we do house, in financial need and can't afford private sector rents, homeless or at risk of homelessness or vulnerably housed, so their current housing may not be suitable for their needs, capable of managing self-contained almshouse accommodation, payment of the affordable almshouse rents, able to manage in a mixed community in the development as a whole. So that is what we are assessing and what's the criteria to qualify for the flats. So part of the assessment process, our project workers in Smart Lets and Smart Move at Citizens Advice carry out an assessment to look at whether applicants have a proven track record of sustaining a licence or tenancy in self-contained, shared or HMO housing. If people don't have the experience of sustaining a tenancy, we look at initially HMO housing so they could progress to Worcester Municipal Charities with the low-level support that Smart Lets can provide, which I'll go into in a minute. We also look if people have a demonstrable commitment to working with us at Smart Lets to establish an ability to sustain a tenancy. So in some cases, we help people with tenancy-ready training as part of the process. And we check that all the other requirements for qualification in the local lettings plan is also fulfilled. And we have an application process, an interview, and we go through a form, help the applicants fill out a form. Next slide, please. I've just gone through that slide, so my apologies. The next slide again, please. Aims of the affordable housing project set out in the locals lettings plan. So the assessment and the local lettings is based on these aims of allocating to those who are poor and in housing need, to help create a local thriving and safe community within the city centre, to reduce the problems of any antisocial behaviour reported, to eliminate any breaches of almshouse rules. Next slide, please. Referrals. We take referrals from a number of partners agencies within Worcester City. So, for example, some MAGS clients who have moved through MAGS shared housing we have taken in the past. Worcester City Council refer to us. All referrals and nominations are assessed on housing need under our Smart Moves, Smart Let scheme. And if the referral is suitable, applicants for a municipal charities beneficiary licence, there's a licence vacancy, allocation is based on the assessment that I've just described. Next slide, please. So once somebody's been allocated, how do we support them at Smart Let? So municipals, managing agents, we accompany applicants who have been allocated an almshouse to the viewing. We assist applicants with all matters relating to setting up home, so that's claiming housing benefit or universal credit housing costs, local discretionary welfare assistance scheme applications, and accessing charitable assistance, for example, armchair. Welfare visits are carried out in the initial stages, more welfare visits to help with things like budgeting, cooking, cleaning, and check that people are managing in the flat based on the history that we've taken, and helping people with financial independence, maintaining their rent payments. There are top-ups in some of the developments, and making sure that rent arrears don't occur. Next slide, please. We also provide ongoing support in terms of preventing tenancy breakdowns. So the people we are looking who are under the local lettings policy would be described as low-level support. So we would look at what help they need to maintain their tenancy. Usually that's in the form of advice, dealing with benefits, debt issues and other issues that require low-level intervention. And we try to do that through a seamless service at Citizens Advice Services. That is supported to make sure that happens by the project workers at SmartLets. Next slide, please. We also, I've repeated that, ensure seamless service and support to maintain this tenancy. We also have continued health and safety checks within the almshouse developments, including weekly fire and safety alarm checks, monitoring CCTV, and ensuring all annual safety checks are completed. Next slide, please. The commitment to repairs. Worcester Municipal Charities, unlike some housing associations, fully equips each almshouse flat with integrated white goods. Each flat has an integrated cooker and fridge freezer, and in some developments there's an integrated washing machine, and in some washer dryers. Where there aren't washing machines, we have communal facilities as part of the development. Worcester Municipal Charities also ensure the almshouse flats are fully carpeted or have alternative flooring. And when a licence ends and somebody leaves, we look at the white goods and carpets. They're inspected, cleaned or replaced. An amount of the rents is budgeted and set aside each year for a sinking fund to meet future repair needs. The figure budgeted for the sinking fund is based on a recommended figure by the Almshouse Association, and that's to estimate for future cyclical maintenance and extraordinary repairs. Routine maintenance is covered in our annual budget. SmartLets have a designated authority to meet minor repairs of up to £500. SmartLets have a list of approved traders who they use for all of the flats that they manage, not just municipals. Any repair above that is approved on the delegated authority of the Worcester Municipal Charities property manager. Next slide, please. SmartLets also provides out-of-hour supports, a number to call in the event of an emergency, and we have people on call to provide remote advice and bring emergency tradespeople in when required, and in extreme cases to attend the property if that is needed. All of the properties are assessed on completion when the developments were completed by SmartLet staff and the property manager at Worcester Municipal in terms of security and CCTV, and the entry systems have been developed on that basis, and the CCTV have been placed when appropriate. These have been reviewed and updated in terms of changing combinations or adding more CCTV as required on an ongoing basis. And thank you very much. That's a very whistle-stop tour to get it in time for you to ask questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was just going to check on your train time. Sorry if you already mentioned it.
I've got 10 minutes.
You've got 10 minutes. That's what I wanted to know. Yes, thank you. So this is a scrutiny item, so open to the floor. Any questions? And I'll take hands first of all, and then direct those questions. So any questions in relation to the presentation we've just... Yeah, everyone's frightened, yeah, because otherwise it'll open up a massive debate. I do have one myself, but I don't want to jump straight in. Hopefully it's nice, simple. Hogging the line. Genuine question though, how do you promote the station? Can this council do more to make people aware that it's there?
Well, I think Worcester Municipal Charities and Citizens Advice Worcester promote it through their website and their normal means. All I can say is the property is desperately oversubscribed. I haven't looked at our figures in Citizens Advice because I've been focusing from a municipal charity basis today, but the demand for our Smart Move and Smart Lets has increased considerably, particularly in the first 2 quarters of the year. First quarter of the year, the demand has eased back in the second quarter, going from April, but we have a frequent flow of single homeless people or people who are inadequately housed coming through Citizens Advice Worcester. They're initially usually seen by our volunteers, or they are referred in by partner agencies, and then they are given appointments with Smart Move project workers, who will then carry out initially a telephone or a face-to-face meeting with the person who's been referred, depending on what they prefer, and we then take it from there. But we have a lot of people who come through HMO accommodation, which we manage, who aren't necessarily tenancy ready, who become tenancy ready, and then they progress through to being eligible for the self-contained accommodation at Worcester Municipal. But we also have referrals as well from yourself to the City Council. But at the moment, there is a churn of vacancies during the year, but how many would you estimate? I'm just asking my colleague. How many vacancies in the almshouses? So yeah, so presently we have a small number per quarter. So we're around up to 5 is about the maximum really, and it's usually under that. And because of the nature of the people who we seek to house, they usually continue to qualify and have made these properties as their home.
Much. But no reference about that train.
Sorry, I did try to make it as comprehensive as
No,
possible,
it's great.
so I
There's a lot
hope
to
it
get.
was.
Okay, well, thank you very much. If you have any further questions, we'll ask them another time. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers. Safe journey.
I wouldn't have rushed so much if I knew there was no questions, so thank you. I hope it wasn't too garbled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to invite Catherine Lack from the chair of the Worcestershire Interfaith Forum to speak for up to 5 minutes in the public participation slot. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Catherine Lack and I'm here as chair of the Worcestershire Interfaith Forum. And I'm here to ask you to consider the benefits of having a faith covenant in place here in Worcester. If you could put, yes, thank you. I've got a very, very short presentation, nothing like the last, I can assure you, which was very good, but. So yes, that's who we are. We represent all the different faiths. We haven't yet got to that bit, but that's absolutely fine. So yes, the value of a faith covenant, which is essentially an agreement between faith communities and local councils, is now well established. And we've been looking at how such a covenant could benefit us here in Worcester. The covenant, in brief, is a way of putting in writing a commitment to working together. Just a bit of background. Government, both local and national, have realised that not only can they work together with faith communities, but that they must. There's been really quite a movement on this in the past few years, brought to the head by the COVID epidemic, but also apart from that. And the covenant is a way of authorising that. And again, to give a bit of the background and the history, Birmingham were one of the first to sign a covenant. That was back in 2014. They revised it majorly last year. The West Midlands Combined Authority signed up in September this year. Walsall and Sandwell signed up on the same night, and Dudley are planning to follow suit shortly. Here in Worcestershire, to prepare for this, we met with representatives from faith leaders and the City Council in Birmingham to learn how their covenant works to benefit the whole community. And the covenant strikes me as tying in very well with a number of your priorities as a council, including, most obviously, building stronger and better communities, because faith groups are totally rooted in the local community, and a healthy and active city, because faith groups are very much involved with physical health and mental health, but also with spiritual health, which can easily be overlooked. So the involvement of faith communities, both individually and in cooperation with each other, is now seen as increasing importance. For instance, I represented faith communities in the Worcestershire response to COVID, and in particular, in reference to communication with some hard-to-reach groups. In practice, on those meetings, I never spoke up for the Church of England, which I belong to. I did speak up at least once for Muslims and at least once for Catholics, really about the value of vaccination, trying to reach hard-to-reach groups, which can only really be achieved, or can be achieved often best, by communication with faith groups, because they are embedded in local communities in a way that many other organisations can never be. And certainly through being involved in that COVID group, I was then rung up by various members of the council when they needed advice on all sorts of things. That's to give you a bit of background. Next slide, please. The formal definition of the faith covenant, it's a joint commitment between faith communities and local authorities to a set of principles that guide engagement, aiming to remove some of the mistrust that exists and to promote open, practical working on all levels. I could go into more detail on that. What it means in practice: faith communities are free to practice their beliefs and religious observances without restriction, and there will be no discrimination on the grounds of religion, gender, marital status, race, ethnic origin, age, sexual orientation, mental capability, and so on. Local authorities, similarly, but commit to welcome the involvement of faith groups in the delivery of services and social action on an equal basis with other groups. And similarly, there will be no discrimination on the bounds of religion, gender, marital status, race, ethnic origin, age, sexual origin, and so on. And there should be something in there about no proselytizing, although I was reading, apparently that is less of an issue now than it was, say, 20 years ago. The next slide, please. A little bit of detail. I was looking at some of the research of this. 10 hallmarks of a good partnership. And if I'd remembered how to do it, on this slide I would just have had the word trust, and I would have added all the other bits later, because trust is the most important. Nothing can happen without trust. And that involves getting to know each other, how we work as faith communities, how you work as a council, how we can work together for the benefit of all. The other 9 follow on from that one. Cultivating transparency, sharing values, ethos and motivation, embracing a new mindset, committing to a potential culture shift, a commitment to talking honestly about conflict and misunderstanding, a willingness to communicate regularly, come back with data-backed solutions, developing shared goals and action plans, telling good stories and celebrating achievement.
Sorry, Catherine, 4 seconds left.
Sorry?
Say a minute left.
Yep, that's fine. In practice, what results? In Birmingham, we had about some tremendous work going on with end-of-life care and the healthy and active city. And specifically on health, support for ethnic groups who face health inequalities and are more susceptible to certain health conditions, social actions to improve the lives of those facing poverty, articulating the health needs of their communities. We also heard about a faith map. Now, we've got some of the basis of that on the WIF website, but it's too general because the county is simply too big. And the final thing I meant to put on there, the best website for this is faithandsociety.org, which is where I've taken quite a lot of this from, as well as the personal experience. Thank you very much. Was I within time?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to use my chair's privilege to just highlight what you said about faith speaking up for other faiths now more than ever.
Absolutely.
So your presence is absolutely beautiful. So thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Bobsky, am I allowed to? chair's privilege again. Questions at this? I am sorry. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to look at the minutes from the previous communities meeting on the 19th of July. I'm going to ask committee if it's a true and accurate record. I'll take it page by page, so both accuracy and any matters arising. So page 1 of the minutes. Nope. Page 2. Page 3. Four. True and accurate record. Thank you, everyone. Looked at had agenda item 5. So we're going to move on to agenda item 6, which is report on Freedom Leisure, to be led by Alan New. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've got a couple of items this evening which are Freedom Leisure related. First of all, we're going to take a look at the contract annual report for April 2022 to March 2023. And we've got some representation from Freedom Leisure here tonight, and they are very kindly going to do a PowerPoint presentation for us. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to my left Rob Tyler, who is the area manager for the local contract covering Worcestershire, so that's the Malvern and Worcester facilities. And to my right, Lee Thomas, who is the regional manager for Freedom Leisure covering the South West region.
Thanks, Alan. Good evening, everybody. Can't believe it's been a year since I was last sat here. How time's flown. So yeah, I've just got a short presentation to go through with you today. So whenever you're ready, you can. Great. So as Alan mentioned, this is the annual performance monitoring report for year 7 of the 10-year contract, covering last financial year across the city of Worcester, the sports facilities, our active communities team, and tennis at Cripplegate and Gullabout Park. Next slide, please. Sure, you might not be able to all see that there, but it was another challenging year for us off the back of COVID. We were straight into a utility crisis, a cost of living crisis, and I think many businesses faced challenges across the board. But with that said, there were lots of strengths there for us, as you can see on the screen. Picking out a few of the highlights here, our Learn to Swim programme ended the year at our highest ever position, with 2,574 weekly members taking part in swimming lessons. We take children from the age of 3 months. We've got adults at 80 plus in the programme, so it's fantastic to see. There was a 7% increase in active participation when compared to the previous year. We managed our utilities reduction plan well. There was an 18% reduction when compared to the previous year, which is 326 tonnes of CO2 saved compared to 2019-20. Despite the challenges for us financially, we actually invested into St John's Sports Centre with a fitness upgrade, which has been well received by the customers and well used. We also invested into the squash courts at Nunnery Wood with a full refurbishment of both of the courts there, and it's fantastic to see that the leagues down there at the moment are really doing really well. And positive news last week was that squash has made the Olympics, so we're really pleased about that. We saw significant improvements with the group exercise programme. Since the pandemic, it's clear lots of groups are coming into the centre together, they're meeting friends, but a 10% improvement compared to the previous year. We were really happy with that. Out in the community, we continue to deliver the free multi-sports and inclusive sport programs. We attended community engagement. We did community engagement events throughout the city, such as supported the Queen's Jubilee event and many other events in the city. I put it on their weakness. Yeah, unfortunately, there was a loss last year of £210,000 for Freedom Leisure across the contract, mainly from an incomplete membership return following the impact of the pandemic. Whilst we recovered to about 95%, that was at the latter part of the year, which typically leisure centres, as you know, were probably at their busiest from January onwards, which I'm sure you'll start to see. As you can see, the threats currently, there is a national shortage of swimming teachers, which is a concern for us and the organisation. We're doing everything we can to actively promote the benefits of being a swim teacher, such an important life skill, but that is a threat at the moment. There seems to be, again, since the pandemic, a shortage of coaches. So again, that's a threat that we're trying to mitigate against. And generally, the economic outlook, cost of living crisis is clearly still challenging for lots of people. To flip some of those into opportunities, we're really working hard and we're looking at apprentice opportunities. We are looking to build health partner referral schemes, expansion of our centre-based healthy communities programmes, and just to pick out one more there, this year we delivered our first half-funded holiday camp, which was the Holiday Activity Fund. Essentially, children in receipt of free school meals got a free space in our holiday camps, and provided with free food as well. We delivered that in the holidays, and we delivered that in the summer holidays, and we secured funding to do that in January as well. So that was positive there, and we'll look to continue to do that. Next slide, please. Financial performance, as indicated on the previous slide, was a £210,000 loss. That was inclusive of a management fee paid to Worcester City Council of £580,000. We thankfully received some utility support from Worcester City Council of £126,000, which we're very grateful for, but it was a deficit of £210,000. So it's a challenging year. Things are looking much brighter this year, and I'll come on to that shortly. If you could change the slide, please. As mentioned before, we've managed our energy reduction plans well. Last year, we implemented a 26-point energy non-negotiable plan across Worcester and Malvern, and indeed the organisation. And this helped us to reduce our energy consumption even further. Just provided a few of the key points there were a swimming pool change in temperature. Unfortunately, we had to reduce that to obviously save on consumption and costs. There's been mandatory environmental training provided for all colleagues, so bringing everybody through on the journey with us. Reduction in air conditioning, reduction in air handling. Sports halls is just some of the examples there. Next slide, please. As you see from the graphs, the green was last year. We saw at Purdeswella just under a 25% reduction compared to the previous year. That was helped by a 12-week closure due to the refurbishment of the tiles at the centre. But with that said, see the green line pretty much stays under the previous year, either side of that 12 weeks. And we feel that we would have achieved a 13.5% reduction outside of that anyway. Gas usage reduced compared to the previous year by 9.3%. Again, taking out that 12-week period, we feel we still would have achieved a 5.1% reduction. Next slide, please. St John's Sports Centre, fantastic achievement last year. We saw a 6.6% reduction on electricity and a 35% reduction on gas compared to the previous year. Next slide, please. As a contract, last year we saved 117 tonnes of CO2 compared to the previous year. Comparing that to 2019-20, we saved 326 tonnes. Year on year, we saw a combined electricity reduction of 206,000 kilowatts across the contract, which, based on the current tariffs, is equivalent of about £60,000 a year. In terms of gas, we saved 240,000 kilowatts, again, the equivalent of £14,500 a year. Just to pick out a few here, the electricity savings were enough to power 70 average UK homes for a full year, enough power to supply all 3 sports centres for just over 2 months. I won't read them all, but enough power to make 110,000 cups of tea. In terms of gas, enough gas saved to heat 20 UK homes, enough gas to heat both swimming pools at Perth as well, and the pool hall for 4 months. Some really good work there from an energy reduction point of view. And on to the next slide, please. So this is the Worcester City Insights taken from Sport England surveys. Approximately 101,000 residents in the city of Worcester. I'll just pick out a few of the other numbers here. 32% of the adults are not reaching recommended daily activity. 63% of adults are overweight or obese. 18% of people have at least one long-term health condition. 16.5% of children are living in poverty. And 23% of the population consider themselves lonely. Won't go through them all. That's just a bit of an insight into our city, taken from the Sport England survey. Change slide, please. So here are just a few of the programmes that we provide, really, just to improve the health and well-being of our residents. Again, I won't go through them all, but we really focus across these 5 common themes. SEND and ethnically diverse, young people, older people, women and girls, low socio-economic and health. And I won't go through them all, but just to pick out a few. Last year, we provided refugees in Ukraine the opportunity to access the facility for 3 months free of charge. Young people, we've delivered drowning prevention talks in local schools. We've recently delivered the half-funded programme, as mentioned before. For older people, going back to the previous slide, was around isolation. We deliver walking sports, seated exercise. Women and girls, ladies that lift in the gym. This Girl Can, ladies only swimming groups, been a success. Onto the low socio-economic, we've delivered the free multi-sports across the city. We provide concessionary pricing. There's been free tennis initiatives, free open days, and over to health, diabetes prevention group. We delivered a weight management boot camp as well, and we'll look to hopefully expand on the health strand as we come into throughout the rest of this year. Most of our programmes and the development plan has been shared with the Active Partnership Public Health, and Alan is the client officer, and we work in collaboration in terms of improving our programmes. Next slide, please. A few pictures there. Unfortunately, we're not going to play the video because the link doesn't work, but Alan has kindly agreed to share the YouTube. I wouldn't try. Um, and yeah, Alan's going to share the YouTube video with you, which essentially showcases from the customer side rather than me sat here today going through the programs with you. Next slide, please. Just a snapshot here of the development plan for the year ahead, again endorsed by the Public Health and Active Partnership. Not a, whilst we're always looking to evolve, I suppose the call to arms here is that we're open to suggestions to improve our programming. And so, yeah, there's just a few of the key points really within the plan for this year. Next slide, please. And finally, wow, there's 2 more slides, sorry. What else do we want to achieve this year? And this is really why we exist as an organisation. Really, we're here to improve lives through leisure. All we deliver is social value. We want to have a great reputation with customers, clients, and our colleague teams. We want to continue to improve the facilities and services we operate, minimise the impacts of our delivery on the environment. And this one's clear, I think, despite some losses last year, that actually to measure our success by the impact that we have, not just on our financial results, the community and the good that we are doing, and to continue to grow the business, delivering highly valued community leisure services to an increasing number of areas. So we've just taken on the Gloucester contract recently, and up in the Cotswolds, so around the area, we won contracts very recently, so it's great to see. Next slide, please. Finally, this is just again from our Chief Executive Officer, Ivan, that couldn't be here this evening, but just on behalf of Ivan, myself, Lee, and the rest of the team at Freedom, you know, thank you very much for the support that we have received from Worcester City Council. It's been fantastic, and as we enter into the rest of this year, we'll continue to work tirelessly on behalf of you to improve lives through leisure, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Very much for the presentation. Alan, are you going to speak to the report any further, or is it open? Okay. So this is a scrutiny item. It's for noting, but are there any questions? 3, 5 questions. Councillor Kowski, first of all, and then Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate on the energy savings. It's really good story, and the environmental impact, positive environmental impact that you're making. What a fantastic asset. I mean, I use it with my family, both here and in Malvern. But in terms of your membership figures, how do you compare with other providers, other leisure centres? And as a follow-up, so in terms of the number of members across the city, how do you plan to serve? I don't want to say compete, I suppose, but what's the strategy of attracting people to?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. And yeah, just in terms of memberships, compared to our pandemic levels, by the end of last financial year, we recovered to 95% compared to the pre-pandemic. So we really recovered strongly final quarter of last financial year, which was fantastic. Yeah, it's been a challenging road with memberships, but going back to what we said before, everything we do is around social value. Really try to bring our communities together through the programs that we provide within the centre, the group exercise program. Try to obviously pitch ourselves as we're not just a gym. Access, there's opportunity for all within our leisure centres, whether that be. So I think that's how we separate ourselves others, and it's a really it's a challenging question with regards to how we're getting on against others, and it's something that Alan's asked me before, and I've tried to do as much research as I can, but data that is available for England very outdated, so it's challenging. But what I would say for Freedom Leisure as an organisation, we've recovered well in terms of memberships, and Worcester City is right up there across our other partnerships. We've got currently 28 contracts across the UK, about 120 sites. And against the other contracts, I think our recovery has been others. That answers most of the questions. And it might be, go on, Lee.
If I could add, what differentials are between the operators, actually, particularly across the Worcester area. There are budget gyms, and then there are leisure centres, and actually we employ the community of Worcester, people that makes a difference. There are many facilities out there that you swipe your card and entry, you go in, you don't speak to anybody, there's no social environment, you exercise and you leave, and actually bringing people back to the heart of the community. The leisure centres. And just to answer, I think, your first question related to editor analysis, do we do our due diligence around the price point? Absolutely, and I'll come on to that, I think, on the next point of the agenda item today, but it's certainly part of what we Alan.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. You won't be surprised as a Green Councillor, I would also like to congratulate you on your energy use. It's really, really positive. I had a question surrounding refugees. I noticed you said that you had an offer for Ukrainian refugees. I wonder if that was extended to refugees of other nationalities.
I will learn at some point for the 5th year of this. Yeah, really important question. It's something that obviously I wouldn't want to commit to now without discussing with Alan as the client officer and internally with Freedom Leisure. But yeah, it was fantastic to see the Ukrainian facilities last year, not just in Worcester but in Malvern. Clearly had a positive impact on the lives of those refugees. Yeah, clearly that would be a great thing for us to do, and to obviously go away and have that discussion. Back to you, if that's okay.
Amos?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on the increased usage of the St John's Leisure Centre. Very pleased to see that. I would, in fact, attend myself, but I'm not fit enough to do exercise. I won't bank on that. But the serious point is, it refers to paragraph 2.9. Clearly, you've identified and focused on certain groups, young people, special needs, SEND, women and girls, low socioeconomic families, disability support, all commendable. But there is one group that hasn't been mentioned. There have been reports on this in recent years, white working class males who are underperforming in schools. And I suspect it could be because, in a sense, as a group, they have been neglected. And it seems to me that it would be helpful if you could focus on that group, because clearly it may be an opportunity for them to burn off some energy. It may be sport is an area of activity where they're going to excel and do something useful and achieve something. So there's a lot of, it seems to be a neglected group, but where sporting activity, they could really shine and you know, get them out of incipient crime, antisocial behaviour and so on. But they're not mentioned. I mean, you're not the only group not to have mentioned that group, but there have been a number of reports to Parliament and so on in recent years. The most underachieving group in schools, and therefore I suspect in society as well.
Again, really good question, and like I said on the slide with the development plan, it isn't. That's the development plan, and that's the end of it. I think it's really back and certainly take that away with us. And ultimately, we've got the assets, we've got the people. Really, we want to get people fit and active facilities. This is could be a really good opportunity for us. So yeah, I'll again we'll take that away. Back to you with hopefully some ideas on that.
Thank you, James. Very quick follow-up. that's encouraging to hear your response on that. But again, I think you need to be proactive because you have identified groups, all commendable, as I say, identified, but it's not a group that you have identified as yet. I don't know how you go about identifying and dealing with a group like that, but clearly, given the reports that have already been out in the last few years, educational lack of attainment of that group, I would have thought it should be, in a sense, a priority group, because clearly they're saying it is the most underachieving group in schools. And I think that should be telling us as a council and as a leisure provider something.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree. So yeah, we'll go away, like I said, and that we have actually put in a funding application recently for a Friday night project to hopefully run at Perd as well. Actively at that group, but yeah, we'll take it on board back and build this into the development plan. Sure.
Thank you both. Councillor Teixeira?
I think at one point, and I'm sure that Alan will correct me if I'm wrong, the contracts with Freedom Leisure stipulates that you work with Worcester Play Council. Is that still the case?
From the point of view of on a contractual basis, the Play Council have an entitlement to use of the facilities. So what's happened in recent times is that Freedom Leisure have been working with the Play Council at events. So where they've gone along to some of the summertime events, the Play Council and Freedom now are working in kind of junction with each other so that they attend, because what they're tending to find is that there is some benefit to both parties. So some of the children that initially come along to do play activities are taking part in sporting activities and vice versa. But from a contract point of view, it's more around the access to the facilities for the Play Council.
So the Play Council is accessing those facilities now, are they?
They're not accessing them at the moment. They're doing more out and about in the community rather than within the buildings.
Okay, that's it, that's the question.
Unless there's any other hands, final one, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that there was the gas uses. Is there any plans to get away from fossil fuels?
Yeah, just I'm happy to come in on that one, Chair. Certainly at Perd as well, there's the intention to move towards solar panels, so we can reduce energy consumption through use of fossil fuels. And there are plans in place for the other two centres as well. But certainly the Perd as well site, I can't remember which committee it is, but there will be a business case report coming to P&R committee, Policy and Resources Committee at some stage in the near future. That hopefully sets out a business case that members can get behind for solar panels at Perd as well.
And the other thing was just to say, as a long-term member of the sports centre, as I am, how grateful I am when I arrive there and I see such a cross. You see so many different people, different ages, different abilities, and nobody feels any pressure. Everybody's encouraged, whatever your ability is. And I've seen some classes that are very specifically there for older people and people who can't, you know, the walking, football and and oncology and all that sort of thing. Absolutely amazing to see that sport is there for everybody.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to exploit my privilege by adding to the debate. Thank you very much for the presentation. I can't read my own handwriting. You have to apologize. Just want to praise the figures. The statistics you shared are incredible about increasing engagement. The creativity, I loved the ideas that you're coming up with. I could never do such a thing, so that's amazing. Trying to get as many people involved in leisure as possible is brilliant. Yeah, the 5 areas in Worcester amongst the 10% of the poorest areas in England. And I was aware of a couple of areas in Worcester that are in the lowest 10%. In relation to a question asked by Councillor Amos, you know, I would emphasise that the responsibility for getting people involved in leisure is not just the responsibility of Freedom Leisure, it's a collective responsibility. Just kind of backing you up, guys. You know, so it's not all on you to get people involved in society. You know.
I think that's the one thing that we've learned over the last few years with putting the development plans together, try not to just do it on our own and really reaching out to key partners within for us, the Active Partnership, Public Health, yourselves, and there are many other more out there as well, which can help shape the plans. And we're learning all the time, and it's great to get the feedback today, positively make it. So yeah, again, thanks for the feedback.
Thank you. And I did manage to read my own handwriting. It's about energy usage. I was just echoing what others said, getting that reduction, and in the financial context as well. It's just so this report is for noting, and I'm going to simply look around the room for nods of heads, check that we note the report. I don't, as Councillor Amos memorably said a few meetings ago, how can you not note the report? So I remember the most random things. So we have all noted that. It's impossible not to. So thank you very much, everyone. And it's 8 o'clock, and I'm minded to break after the next related item, if that's okay. Not just me having a break. You can all have a break. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on to item 8. Oh, no, item 7, Freedom Leisure proposed fees and charges. And Alan's leading this one. This one will be leading to a decision that needs to be made. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this proposal relates to the Freedom Leisure fees and charges for 2024, which will operate from January to December. On a contractual basis, Freedom Leisure are required to submit their proposal to the City Council by the 31st of August each year. And having done so, we engaged in some consultation during the month of September. So Freedom Leisure have engaged with Public Health and also with the Herefordshire and Worcestershire Sports Partnership, who as organisations have both confirmed that they are happy with the content of both the Freedom Leisure Active Ageing programme and also the proposed fees and charges for 2024. Equally, I've had conversations as the client officer with Rob over a couple of queries, which again, Freedom have been open to. They've listened to the feedback and they've made the appropriate changes. So you'll see from the paper that the proposal looks at an average increase across the various categories of 4.6%. Which is significantly below the current rate of inflation. And we've also carried out a process of local benchmarking. So I've spent some time looking at the fees and charges at other local kind of facilities in the geographical area. And you can see from the table in 3.3 that Purdyswell as quite a large and fairly new facility is positioned quite well in the market in terms of the current charges that are taken. And interestingly, particularly in comparison with the other local pool at Worcester Citizens Pool, which currently charges £6.60 per session for a swim of 16 years and over. So the proposal for 2024 is for Purdyswell's swim-in fee to increase from £5.50 to £6. So even during 2024, it will still be very competitive in the local area. Also as part of that consultation, they have spoken to Worcester Swimming Club, who are based at the site and who host a number of events during the course of the year whether that's county swimming competitions, local galas, etc. And that in itself can be quite challenging because, as you heard from Rob earlier on, activities such as the swim school are extremely well attended, with over 2,500 children every week kind of learning to swim. So when we do host events, it does have an impact on access for the general public. But one of the benefits of Freedom Leisure operating the local contract at Malvern as well is that we're able to mitigate some of that loss of facility during the events, with members being able to go over and access the swimming facilities at Splash over in Malvern. So that's a real kind of positive in enabling both the events and their regular kind of day-to-day users to still take part in exercise. Freedom Leisure also have a number of educational partners. So as you'll probably be aware, the two facilities at Nunnery Wood and St John's are both joint use facilities. So at St John's, we have a educational partner at Christopher Whitehead Language College, and at Nunnery Wood, we have two educational partners on the site at Worcester Sixth Form College and Nunnery Wood High School. With regards to Purdeswell Leisure Centre, although it doesn't have a formal joint use agreement, it does have an educational partner on the site, which is the Heart of Worcestershire College. And again, as you'll see from paragraph 3.7, there is a local agreement that allows the students from the college to be able to participate in the various activities that are available on the site at a 50% reduction, and that subsidy is covered via the actual college themselves. So again, they're being very active in encouraging their students to remain active outside of the curriculum, and that partnership with Freedom Leisure is working really positively. One of the larger increases at 5.6% relates to the fitness class programme, and part of the reason for that is that many of the classes that are taking part within the programme are a licensed exercise programme. It's called Les Mills programme, and it includes a range of classes, and I've listed some of them there, such as body pump, body balance, shabam and grit. I'm sure to some people that doesn't mean a great deal. Yeah, absolutely. You haven't seen me doing it, that's correct. But that is, a number of those are high intensity classes. So they follow the principle of kind of short, sharp, high intensity kind of exercises. But because Freedom Leisure have to cover the cost of the licence fees on that, then obviously they have to pass that cost on in terms of the cost of the classes. In terms of the tennis courts at Cripplegate and Gallivelt, the decision has been taken again this year to freeze the existing prices, and I think, Rob, probably from memory, that's for about the third year running that the prices have been frozen again, just to encourage you know, more kind of casual take-up of that. But I think one essential point to raise there is that whilst you've got the cost of the casual court for tennis, Freedom Leisure do offer a very competitive family package for tennis, where a family of 4 can play tennis for up to 4 occasions per week throughout the course of the year. And that's very competitively priced. And again, when you break that down to the session fee, it comes into about 60, 70 pence a session. So it's extremely competitive on that basis. The proposal in front of you this evening, from a kind of financial perspective, having worked with Rob, we've looked at the forecast in terms of the additional income that's due to generate. And that comes to a value of about 146k. And again, just kind of supports Freedom Leisure kind of moving forward in terms of as Rob alluded to earlier on, getting to a stage this financial year where they are back into a surplus position and there isn't any necessity for them to continue to need further financial support from the City Council moving forward. So at this stage, I'd quite like to just open it up to a question and answer session, either directly to myself or again to the gentleman from Freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, obviously, I'll open it up to debate. I've just been, not just been advised, a couple of days ago, been advised that there are a couple of fees within this that have been picked up by the press, and I'm just wondering whether that's an opportunity to elaborate on those fees that have been picked up. I'm not aware of which ones have. So would that be a good time to just maybe alleviate concerns or answer those questions, and then we'll have a more open debate? Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, Worcester News published the news article, I think it was last week, and we've since corrected them, that the membership prices that they published were in fact our joint membership prices as opposed to a single membership price. So really it looks extortionate, but it's not correct, and we've since gone back to Worcester News. We've asked them to amend the article, clear that one up.
So they doubled an annual fee, was it?
So they've, I think, looked at the report and they've gone to the most expensive one, which is actually a joint membership, and they publicised that. And that one of the memberships that they actually publicised was the Worcestershire County-wide membership, which includes the 7 centres that we operate. So they've, it just looks a lot more expensive than it.
Okay. So yeah, there are a couple of recommendations, and I'll reiterate them after the debate, if that's okay. I'm just going to look for no hands or questions. Lawrence was first.
My question's about the LESMA licenses. Are they per activity that's offered, as in the different types, balance, or per class or member? You know, what's the ratio that they're charging you? Is it the venues that you do it? Because I should imagine it's but it's very popular worldwide, sort of recognised, the body, whatever.
One really.
Yeah, sure. There's varying licence fees. As a minimum, we hold 3 licences per partnership area. Depending on how popular they are, we introduce licences. Because we are a large operator, we do have it. So the more we would have in this partnership. However, we still.
I think per as well, you know, obviously the class programme, it's huge, and across Worcester, so we've got the full works essentially.
There are some other forms of class, but it is quite clear when you're moving around how popular those classes are. So they're a big draw. So you don't really. It would be a false economy, I feel, to cut back on something that's recognised and a programmed, delivered.
I think the usage as well, the improvements year on year, it just shows how popular they are. And Jamie, the fitness manager, is constantly asking questions if we can get this license, and we're always saying yes. So we just need to be mindful of,
It is certainly something we've considered. But there was a private operator that did it last year. Quick Google search will probably give you the perspective on that one. So for us, it really isn't an option.
Councillor
Very much, Chair, and thank you, Alan, for the report. I have I suppose, a couple of questions. So, because this is coming back next week to Income Management Committee, just out of interest, would it be possible to, in 3.2, to have a taste at least of this market of research exercise that you've mentioned? And I simply, just to satisfy curiosity and perhaps discourage Worcester News from trying to sort of overinterpret the increase in prices. Personally, I would find it quite useful to have this market comparison with the private providers. That's question number one. Would it be possible at some stage to get a little bit more sort of insight and taste for what others offer? The question I have around 3.8, where does it fit in the table on the previous page where you set all the categories of the members? What is it done? So this 5.6, it's fitness class. Where does it fit in the table? Is it there, or am I missing? Okay. So it's a subcategory under this. Okay. So the question on this one is, I'm just trying to sort of join the dots between the presentation offered by the by my friends from Freedom Leisure and see whether, because this is it looks like quite a significant increase, and it seems to be, unless I'm mistaken, aimed at people who are already quite fit, whereas on the other hand we have an obesity problem. So I'm not entirely sure if I sort of see the full context is what I'm trying to say, I think.
I think also I should add that as well as doing the kind of they carry out probably an even more detailed piece of analysis work. Rob might want to add a little comment in a minute, but again, you know, because of that process, to make sure that where they're positioning themselves in the market, both obviously more importantly geographically on a local basis, but also nationally as well, because of the scale of the operation, because they've currently got a better under their umbrella. Of course, that gives them access to a lot of as well. Add anything, Rob, to that?
No, I think you summed it up well, Alan. In terms of before we present the fees and charges through to Alan, it goes fully through the organisation as well. So I will daily will review it to our executive leadership. They have a lens on all partnerships. I've worked with Alan and provided summary of essentially our proposal is, yeah, we take on board that
feedback. I suppose this is exactly what I was after. It's just a sample of the market analysis that would reassure the members whether here income management provide a fuller picture about the analysis of the local provider. I'm terribly sorry, it sounds like a free marketeer, and we have a Conservative councillor who is tribune of the proletariat. Sorry.
If it makes you feel better, I had a similar question, so yeah. First of all, going to come to Councillor Norfolk.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to note in section 2 the paragraphs that talk about the discount scheme for council employees, the free swimming during holiday periods for each of the poorest wards in the city, and the free tennis. But furthering on Councillor Amos's point and the point you excellently made in the previous section, I'm a bit unclear about what concessions we offer for low-waged families.
In terms of discount off the combination of the memberships, then we offer a 50% discount, and there's a range of different criteria that individuals can meet in order to be appropriate for that discount to be applied. So all they would need to do is make the application with Freedom and just provide that piece of evidence, whatever that piece of relevant evidence may be, and that would entitle them to that discount. So it is, I should point out that that discount relates to memberships rather than casual pay as you go, because, and the reason for that, the rationale behind that is that some of those benefits that are entitled are time sensitive. So therefore it becomes quite a big onerous task then if you're having to kind of keep checking them every 3 months. So we relate that to the annual memberships rather than the casual activities.
Thank you, Alan.
Ali.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alan, for the report. Just a quick question. Why there is no direct debit concession for swim packages, swim school packages? Swim school packages for juniors and adult lessons. I can see these direct debit concession applied on all categories, but not for Freedom Leisure swim school packages. Just for my knowledge, what was this reason behind?
Something we'd never really discussed, and it wasn't part of our initial bid. It doesn't mean we can't do that, but it's particularly challenging in terms of water space. It's certainly something we can look at, Alan, but
Just to come in there as well, all children and adults on the Learn to Swim programme benefit from free public swimming outside of their lesson. And that was in the bid, still exists today, and that's something that we're, again, that separates us against that we still provide that, so it's good value. Gives children and adults the opportunity to practice their swimming outside of the environment, or come and have fun as opposed to just take part in the lesson.
Yeah, can I just add to that, because I think that's a really important point about the fact that, you know, it is free usage in terms of casual swim if you are a member on the swim school. But I think the other element to that, which is different to some of the other categories, is the fact that one of the challenges Freedom Leisure have faced in more recent times is a national shortfall on swimming teachers, and therefore obviously that has a knock-on effect then to the package that they have to offer. So again, you know, when you get a situation where you have to pay above the going rate in order to get swimming teachers in, and obviously that then has a knock-on effect to the activity price for whatever that may be. And swim school is a classic example of that, really, where we've struggled in recent times, haven't we, Rob, to be able to attract and retain swimming teachers.
Councillor Lamb.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just under item 211, free tennis, and obviously I'm on record as being a great advocate of greater free tennis, especially in Cripplegate Park. And there's a section here which says there's an allocation of 15 hours per week for free tennis, etc. And then it says, in addition, the council has the option of funding an additional 15 hours of free tennis between the 1st of April and the 30th of September 2024, as was the case over the same period in 2023. I suppose my question is, I assume that the council has to buy that. How much would that be? Who decides whether they take up that option of purchasing those additional 15 hours? When would that take place? And is this less likely this year when the council is looking to save money?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, the answer to that is that we have the allocation within the budget. The value of that period is about £2,700. It's something that we have done since first opening the tennis courts, because we wanted to offer further support at peak times to the 15 hours that Freedom Leisure already provide. And what we've found over recent years is the most effective use of that time and resource is to actually run a kind of free period prior to Wimbledon. We've tried various things, but we've found that by offering the package in the lead up to Wimbledon, that is the period of time which encourages people to come out and play, because once the tournament itself is underway, of course, people want to be watching the tournament and that as well. So what we do then is we extend the Wimbledon period, because people play for free in the couple of weeks leading up to the event, and then the event itself takes place over a number of weeks. And then you hope then that people obviously will continue to play out into the rest of the summer and into the kind of autumn period. Oh, Councillor Cooper, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around school swimming. I think it's important to note that swimming isn't just good for fitness, it's a life-saving skill. And many children will only get that opportunity to swim when they go swimming with school. I was wondering what kind of research and assurances I can be given that schools can afford a 6% increase. Thank you very much.
Yeah, again, an important question. We've got about 24 schools take part at PERD as well, and we've sustained that number now for some years. Anybody despite that we have applied over the last couple of years. But we do treat the fees and charges sensitively out to the schools well in advance. So what I would say is that any that schools that are suffering with hardship, we would obviously, it's a challenging one, isn't it? Because ultimately we still need to, going back to the loss we had this year, do our best to bridge that gap. So we'll be working with schools in the build-up. Sometimes the schools in the past have perhaps alternated first bi-weekly. They are struggling. There's opportunities and there.
But I think the important thing to add are still there, operating. Quite year-to-date increase of £40,000 in comparison to the same period last year. Important that we are still able to operate the facility. So
I've got the last one. Before we go to a vote, wondered if more explanation could be given as to why the average increases are different. So, for example, I'm sorry if you've already explained this, but so, for example, a monthly membership average increase is 3.8. An annual membership is going to increase by 4.7. That's just a straight comparison with another competitor, or is there something more complicated than that?
So on the annual memberships, it's the direct debit times 11. Essentially, all annual membership holders will 1 month free charge, essentially. Yeah.
So that's that one explained. But what about the other differences? 5.9% and a 3.8. Wondered if there's a formula, or is it, like I said, a straight comparison?
I think, again, going back to what I said before, it was a loss for us last year, and we do have to look at where there are opportunities to our fees to hopefully get us into a stronger financial, where we can continue to provide those community programs that are essential. So it really our judgment across the board. So benchmarking the other organisers.
I think that's the main point really, is that we have done that benchmarking. That there are categories on here that affect Worcestershire wide. City membership maybe. But PERD as well, for example, is a zero. Taking that into consideration very much.
Great, thank you both. Colin, two more hands up. So there are two recommendations here. I just want to check to take them en masse or one by one. Take them all in one. Yeah. Is that okay if I take them all in one? And is there a proposer? Okay, so what we would be agree, assuming that hands go up in the air. Committee recommends that the proposed freedom leisure fees and charges for the 2024 calendar year at Appendix 1, we recommend that they go to Income Management Subcommittee on 15th November for approval. So that's number one. And the second recommendation in front of us is that we note that subject to approval by Income Management Subcommittee on the 15th, that the proposed fees and charges will then go to full council on the 28th of November, that all 35 councillors can finally approve. So those are the two recommendations which we will take all together. Do I have a proposal?
Yes, that's agreed. That's unanimously carried. Yes.
Thank you to everyone who's given presentations and answered our questions. Very much, all three. I suggested that we have a break, if that's okay. Reflecting. Yeah, just so 25 to, and then we'll take up from item number 8. All right, so 5 minutes-ish. Thank you.
on.
Yeah, okay, everyone. Yeah, better crack on. People keen to get some sleep, I think. Yeah, better crack on. So the next item is the setting of the budget for 24-25 and the medium-term financial plan up to 2028-2029. There are a couple of proposals to agree upon or not at the end. Shane is going to lead on this one. Obviously, there'll be a time for questions afterwards. You, Shane.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. This is the stage of the budget setting process which we've got to, which is beginning to think about what the resources which fall within the remit of the committee and to consider whether we want to look at changing those resources or finding different ways of doing things. So really the report is just for information, just for noting. So you've got the information here in front of you and invite questions outside of the meeting between now and the next meeting we have in January or February. Then get in touch, talk to myself or Mark Baldwin and other members of the finance team. We're happy to talk to you about any information in more detail or any things that you want to work through. So as Appendix 1 shows that what's in the remit of this committee spend is around about £3.4 million, half of which is in salaries. And there's a substantial amount of income, £1.3 million in income comes from this. A big part of that is Freedom Leisure's management fee, which we're still one of the councils in the country that still derive a management fee. And it's great to see that we've come through COVID and we're on the other side of that, and we're now still continuing to receive that fee. So that's a really, really good significant part of the income for the community. The other thing in terms of revenue that we said we'd do when we had the all members budget meeting back in October was to rate, just to make sure all committees had sight of the savings that we've been looking at through the year. So we've had a significant savings plan which has been worked through Policy and Resources Committee. And as far as this committee is concerned, on page 52 under paragraph 3.4, the table there shows that £355,000 of savings and efficiencies have come through this area. Most of those are itemised in the paragraphs below. The biggest is that reduced energy, the biggest single one that is reduced energy cost estimates of 190,000. And that is because when we were in discussion with Freedom Leisure at the time, we set the budget in February, it was anticipated that energy costs would be significantly higher. A possible contribution of around £500,000 at that stage. That was then reduced to around 350, and since then has been reduced further. Now that's partly because energy prices have fallen, but also because of the efficiencies and work that they've done during the year to try and down. And we do anticipate actually they'll be even reduced further, that contribution. So that's been a really important a driver in terms of reducing costs for the coming year. Others are some of the things in terms of increased income. These are matters which have gone through Policy and Resources in terms of applying a charge for the Worcester Show, for example, and increases in allotments fees. These are things which are going to be explored through the next year, and once we've put those in place and see what kind of impact we have, we'll then come back and have a discussion here about the impact of those and how they've gone before deciding to progress with those. So we'll come back and talk about those in more detail. The other appendices are just setting out the capital programme, where we are at the moment in terms of the overall projects which are going on in the council. So again, if there are any aspects of that you'd like to know more about and show more interested in them, please, by all means, get in touch and we're happy to talk through those. And the final appendix just covers earmarked reserves which fall to this committee to consider. There's been a lot of spend in respect of those, a significant amount of project spending. There is quite a little bit left, particularly around housing for vulnerable tenants. That was one which was put aside as a city plan, £500,000 some years ago. So we're continuing to hold that to support activities around housing. There is a review now of earmarked reserves which will take place over the next couple of weeks. And once we've completed that, we'll then have an idea of the quantum of reserves which potentially have been freed up. Some of those need to meet commitments which we've already made. But at that point, we'll be able to talk with committees about whether there are any areas that we want to develop or new initiatives, and see what's available in terms of earmarked reserves which could be used for those. So that's the normal process. As I say, for the moment, this is largely just for information, just to start that process going. And if any members want to engage more fully in that process between now and the January, February committees, then by all means get in touch, and we're happy to talk through it and explore ideas with you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, that although there is that opportunity, obviously we can ask questions now. We have one coming from Councillor Amos. Yeah, I better get my pen. Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, I'd like to engage now as opposed to the next few months.
Before you do, I'm just going to see if there are any others. So you're first. 2, 3. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Well, I've got two questions actually. On the first one, I'm very concerned about it, so I hope I've misunderstood it. And it's Appendix 4, and it says PSPO enforcement officers. Total allocation is 60,000. So far, we've spent less than half that, 26,000. So the balance, presumably what's left, is going to be 33,000. It then says no further spend planned. Now, does that mean that we haven't spent what we've allocated and we're not going to spend any more anyway? That's the first question, very simple question. Have I understood that correctly?
I'm going to have to defer to someone more qualified to answer that question. Shane?
You said more qualified.
You were looking at me. You were looking at me. Shane, please. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So what often happens in these cases is that we identify a reserve to support an initiative, and then the initiative takes place but doesn't necessarily draw on the reserve. So we've carried out the enforcement activity for the PSPOs without needing to draw on those reserves. So that reserve then can potentially be released.
So are we saying then, Chair, that the 60,000 is a reserve?
Correct, yes.
Right.
The table sets out reserves.
So we put, obviously, Chair, we put that in because we thought it was necessary. And obviously, I mean, I went along with that because I think enforcement is necessary. There's no point having PSPOs if we don't enforce them. And my criticism has been for some time, you may recall, Chair, is that we're not enforcing them. I mean, the cycling one in the city centre is not being enforced at all. I occasionally, cyclists occasionally brush past me because they're cycling down, often Deliveroo drivers as well, who shouldn't even be working, in my opinion. But nonetheless, put that to one side. If we're not going to enforce these things, Chair, it raises the question of why are we reviewing the PSPOs if we're not going to enforce them? I mean, you know, it might appear amusing, but it's a matter of fact. If you're not going to, if you don't pass a law if you're not going to enforce it, if you don't have a PSPO if you're not going to enforce it, and it seems to me that we're not doing enough enforcement, but we're actually not spending the money that was allocated. So that is my concern, Chair. That's the first issue. I've got another one, but perhaps I'll let you or the officers answer that point.
I'm going to defer to the officers again. I'm going to defer to the officers again. I do take your general point about, you know, making allocations and then not spending, but I don't want to open up a 10-minute debate on that one. Yeah, Lloyd.
Yeah, Chair, just to confirm what Shane said, we've been able to staff up the parking and enforcement service, you know, through other means. So even though we have difficulty around staffing, sickness, quite high turnover, we've always tried to operate with the 12 civil enforcement officers. The reason that we have to review the PSPOs is because legally we have to. So whether we decide to stand them down, continue or alter, that is a legal process, Councillor Amos. Not to do so would call us into question. So Warwick and the team will bring that review back, I think, to January committee.
To you, Chair, because you're the Chair, but I don't think actually my question has been answered, that we currently have PSPOs, which we are not enforcing, and nobody seems to care that we're not enforcing them. And the one on cycling was all party, it was cross-party support for that, hasn't been enforced ever. We're not enforcing it now, and we don't seem to care. So perhaps we'll leave that for another occasion. But I am, therefore, Chair, I was right to be concerned. Because I think people will wonder why we do these things. Mr. Griffiths is quite right. Legally, we have to review them. But to review them in a situation where we're not enforcing what we've got now does seem frankly absurd. The other question, Chair, if I may, second one, the final one, is on Appendix 2. About 3/4 of the way down, it says EV charging points, car parks. Can I just ask, it might be for Mr. Finn or Mr. Griffiths, but I mean, are these EV charging points, are they supposed to be self-financing? Or would it not be an idea to try and make a profit from them? What is the policy? What is the strategy on this?
Okay.
Through you, Chair, that spend proposed there is the capital item. So that is the amount we spend in terms of helping to install the charge points. We then have a fee setting approach, which is designed to recover the costs in full. And that has been delegated to officers so that we can continually update it to make sure that the charging regime is in line with the market as it develops. So it's slightly unusual compared to our normal regime in terms of fees and charges, that we can keep track of the market and ensure that we've got a rate which is competitive and which will enable us to recover the ongoing revenue costs plus those original capital costs.
So is the short answer to the question that we are aiming to make a profit, generate some income? I don't know whether we've still got the income generating committee, or is it literally just to cover our costs?
We still do have an income management committee, and the intention is to generate income. We aim to recover our costs and create a sufficient surplus to recover a proportion of our overheads.
But, Ms. Flynn, but does that mean we're going to make a profit or not? Is the intention to make a profit or not?
It's not part of the council's financial strategy or aim, or the legal arrangements covering council finances don't allow us to make a profit.
So legally we can't make a profit?
Legally we can, but in principle, if we make a profit, then we require less in terms of taxation income, so that it balances itself out.
Right. So if you buy a litre or gallon of petrol, the petrol station quite rightly makes a profit. If you're charging your car up this way, then we're not making anything out of it. So in a sense, the driver is being subsidised because we're not making a profit.
Through you, Chair, we're not a garage, we're a council, and we operate according to the legal position which governs the finances of councils. It's not part of our financial regime to look to make a profit. So we will make sufficient money to cover the costs that we incur and a surplus to cover a certain amount of our corporate overheads, as much as we will look to recover.
I've made notes, and when we next meet to have a pre-communities committee meeting, I will spark the conversation up again and see where it leads. But sorry, you won't give a satisfactory answer, but I can see where Shane's coming from. PSPO, just for anyone who is that bored that they're watching this meeting right now, as a public space protection order, just in case anyone wondered what a PSPO is. Had to remind myself, I'll be honest. Okay, next question is from Councillor Teixeira. And therefore, the next one's from Councillor Petrovsky.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief and focusing on the bullet points in Shane's paper that refer to this committee in particular. Whereas I'm really pleased to see this saving made in terms of energy efficiencies, 190,000. I'm really worried about the reduction in community grants. I think, considering the second public participation contribution today, or the faith covenant, we should be thinking long and hard. And I'm looking forward to the debate in January, next time we meet. Right across all the committees, whether it's public health, whether it's this communities committee, whether it's an environmental committee, how we can build the stronger links with local charities, faith-based or non-faith-based, to face the challenge, which is basically a financial pressure due to central government funding cuts. So just putting this on the agenda, and I look forward to exploring this in some detail sometime in January.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if it'd be you could very briefly talk about the Hug 1, Hug 2 and sustainable warmth, about any successes within that.
Any anecdotes, but hand over.
Chair, that one's a matter for Environment Committee, and we report regularly on that one through the performance scorecard. Rosie may be able to give a little bit of detail on it, but Madeline is our lead officer. So I think rather than us try and pull them together out of thin air, we can provide, or we can direct members of this committee to the performance scorecard for Environment Committee.
My apologies.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you. Any more questions before we go to recommendation? Thank you, Shane and Lloyd. Yeah, again, I'm going to use my position. Anne, I spoke with colleagues before we walked into this room about how bleak it is to be talking about all the savings that we need to make. In other words, cuts. But once again, I have to, make the public aware, if they are indeed watching this meeting, that the context is the removal of funding, namely the central government grant since 2010. And it can't be that much fun for officers to constantly have to look where money can be saved or indeed where money can be generated. That said, we have, as councillors, been given ample opportunity to put forward creative ideas to make sure that we can balance the books. And whilst we might not like the context that we're living in terms of finances, we have these opportunities to share ideas and not just moan about things. And Shane just alluded to other times when we can have to debate and come up with ideas. So thank you for your work on that. It can't be that much fun, but we do appreciate it. So 2 recommendations regarding this item at the top of the report, and they are to note the budgets for the various services identified for 2023-24, and to note the progress made in delivering the projects included in the City Plan and City Delivery Fund that are relevant to this particular committee, and we would be agreeing that we confirm the programme of work that has been resourced. Those are the 2 recommendations attached to this report. Once again, I'll take them together. If I could have a proposer. Councillor Petrowski, and the seconder, Councillor Norfolk. Fantastic. So everyone all those in favour of the vast majority there, if not everyone? Yep.
Yes, that's carried. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julian. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Shane and Lloyd. Move on to item number 9 then, which is a review of Worcester City letting scheme. Once again, there'll be a vote taken at the end, recommendations to share with you. But before we get to that point, Rosie Badham's going to talk about the report that she's written, and then we will have time for questions. Over to you, Rosie.
Thank you. So this report essentially relates to a choice between investing in or ending the way in which we're operating the city letting scheme that we have within the housing service. So the scheme has been operating for a number of years. Many local authorities across the country operate a similar private sector access scheme because it is particularly difficult for the kind of customers that we work with to access private rented accommodation due to the costs involved and the restrictions in terms of welfare dependence for a lot of our customers. So for a number of years we've operated the scheme, and you will see at 2.6 a table setting out the most recent iteration of the scheme, now called City Life Lettings, and the different services provided to landlords as part of that. So 2 main options, and then with a 3rd option recently added of private sector leasing. So we have a let-only option, which has a one-off payment of £200 at the beginning of the tenancy, no further payments made by landlords during the course of the tenancy. And for that, you can see the services that they receive listed in the table. And then there's a managed let option, which includes all of the above services plus additional services. And for that, the £250 payment charged plus 8% of the rent paid monthly to us to manage the tenant, the landlord. Then the private sector leasing scheme, which again was recently added, increased that monthly payment to 12% by the landlord. The reason for that increase is because by leasing the property, the landlord is getting a guaranteed income whether or not the property. So the leasing option was agreed in 2020 in order that we could more easily prevent families from becoming homeless and also discharge our main homelessness duty into the private rented sector, which is particularly problematic because of the regulations and guidance that govern how we discharge our homeless. However, unfortunately, that decision coincided with a global pandemic, which was one of the main contributing factors to the fact that we haven't actually been able to operate any leased properties under the scheme. And although at its height we were operating over 50 properties, currently we have 22 remaining, all of which are under the let-only options, which, just to reiterate, is a one-off payment of £200 further ongoing costs. So you can see in section 3.1 that there's been a significant decline in the number of new properties that are being brought into the scheme each year. And this section then goes on to summarise the reasons for those decline, that decline, and you'll be unsurprised to hear that economic changes and affordability are a significant factor. So the results of the COVID-19 pandemic, subsequent cost of living crisis, exacerbated the war in Ukraine, utility rises and general cost of living rises, it's meant that if you look at table 3.5, the difference between the LHA, which is the local housing allowance, which is the maximum amount that can receive in universal credit to cover their rent, the difference between that and the average and median rents of private rented properties is significant, in some cases in hundreds of pounds per month. If you are dependent on benefits or on a very low income, that shortfall is an impossible one to bridge, unfortunately. In addition, the information, so we hold a landlords forum annually, and we regularly speak to landlords and letting agents. And anecdotally, the information we're getting is that private rents are in such high demand currently that there's so many applicants for each property that landlords can be more selective about who they're selecting as their tenants. And unfortunately, that does mean that our customers are less attractive simply because they are dependent on benefits, a lot of them, and may need some additional support to help. So again, that's an issue in terms of our ability to access that sector. Repair costs is another issue, so it's another key reason why the managed let and the private sector lease option hasn't been taken up, simply because, so as a local authority, obviously we have very strict procurement regulations, which mean that we are unable to provide repairs at the same level of competitive rate as perhaps a letting agent would be able to. That is something we've explored in terms of employing handyman to undertake more domestic repairs, but again, that would be an additional cost. As I'm sure you're aware, there is an impact of the University of Worcester in terms of the availability of accommodation, large number of houses in multiple occupation in the city, which do generate a much higher income for landlords than a single family property would. So that therefore further reduces the amount of properties which are available. In addition, whereas in the scheme previously we were able to access the records for housing benefit because it's a local authority function, now that universal credit has fully rolled out in Worcester, that isn't something that we can access. And so it's not a reassurance that we can offer to landlords that we can intervene or prevent rent arrears. And finally, the Renters Reform Bill. So although this has been signalled that it will be further delayed due to necessity to make changes to the courts process, the government has signalled that they are looking to tighten regulations on the private rented sector to remove no-fault evictions and to the regulatory burden. And this uncertainty around what's going to be included in that bill and when has also meant that some landlords are far more risk averse in terms of working with us or even perhaps leaving the sector altogether. So looking at section 4 in terms of the costs of the scheme, so the scheme is operated by one full-time equivalent post at 38,700 per year. And if we look at the table at 4.3, you can see that we've costed the cost of all the activities that we do for all of the property, for each property within the scheme. So a cost of on average £1,700 per year per property, whereas we are, and £1,400 of that has been undertaken at nil cost to the landlord because the cost of them is only a one-off £250. So looking at the rest of the housing service, we have been prioritising increasing and improving our temporary accommodation offer in order to reduce the housing benefit subsidy loss incurred by using private rented accommodation, and also to improve the quality of the accommodation and the affordability of the accommodation available to customers. In order to do that, we have modelled a number of different scenarios, and the most cost-effective solution has been the model used at Bromyard Road and Albury Road temporary accommodation, which is where we manage the accommodation in-house and we're therefore able to attract a greater proportion of the subsidy back. As a result of that options analysis, we therefore looked at bringing more temporary accommodation ourselves, including at Park Street, property at Sheffield Close, and Safe Houses, which will be leasing from housing. So although that is a cost-effective solution, obviously it does require staffing resource in order to do that. There's a number of legal requirements that we have, not to mention day-to-day management and vision for that kind of. So what we're recommending then in option 6 is that in order to be able to achieve the savings by using that additional temporary accommodation, that we use the staffing resource which is currently dedicated to the Worcester City Letting Scheme to move over to assist with the support and facilities management provision for temporary accommodation. In addition to that responsibility, we would also be looking to work with private rented sector landlords and tenants to prevent homelessness in that sector, because it is a third of the homeless approaches we receive are as a result of a private rented sector tenancy ending. So we would be looking to roll out the eviction prevention that we currently do with social landlords to private landlords in the city, and to assist tenants to know their rights and also to know their responsibilities in terms of. So looking at alternative options, we obviously have looked at whether we continue the scheme in its current form or continue the scheme with a different offer, and that's where we come to essentially a choice between significantly investing in the scheme. So in order to be competitive with private letting agents, it would mean operating at a significant loss, as well as investing in terms of a handyman service and additional staffing, market and provide support, or to manage the staffing resource that we have in a different way and utilise that so that we can save money elsewhere. The reassurance we do want to give, though, is that we're not recommending that we just walk away from the tenancies that we've already established, the 22 tenancies that we're currently assisting. We would be doing a risk assessment of all of those tenancies, looking at all of the potential vulnerabilities and concerns, speaking to all of the individual tenants and the landlords and identifying anywhere we need to continue to stay involved to provide that support, which we would be providing anyway as part of this new private sector prevention offer. Those are the main points.
Thank you, Rosie. Yeah, very detailed report. I must have more time. Yeah, thank you very much. Huge amount of work there. Questions on the report? Kowski? Do then. Getting to that point, isn't it? Yeah.
Very much, Chair, and thank you, Rosie. I think this was almost a model presentation of how affordable housing works, how difficult and complex it is, and therefore, you know, I think we should appreciate the level of complexity there, especially if you consider that we are. This is a relatively minor activity when it comes to us as a local authority. So I found it fascinating because it's very informative, I think, for people who are not familiar with social housing, how difficult it is to run the scheme for 22 properties. Appreciate the scale of difficulty and complexity if you work for a social housing provider with tens of thousands of properties. So I really appreciate that. And I suppose in terms of the recommendations, I'll be very happy to support the one which is recommended.
Just me with a question then. I know, Councillor Altaf. Yeah, you go first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rosie. My question is that around the country, as me being a professional landlord as a private sector, I've found a lot of cities and counties are using private landlords accommodation for X amount of years for lease. Mainly they're taking leases, and it's took a lot of homeless people off the streets. And I think putting these homelesses in bed and breakfast is costing too much, where you could use a private landlord's accommodation, be a lot cheaper. You've got asylum seekers in this city. You've got refugees here, which you're using for these people, hotels, bed and breakfast, where it'd be half the price if you was renting from a private landlord on a lease, like other cities does. Why can't we do it in Worcester and save money?
Councillor Cooper, I'll come back to you. Yeah, Rosie.
So in terms of bed and breakfast accommodation, I absolutely agree with you that it's not the ideal accommodation we want to be using for anybody in terms of suitability, but also the cost of it is a significant cost. As I mentioned, we've done an options appraisal of all the different models that we could use. So whether that's using registered provider accommodation managed by registered providers, leasing registered providers accommodation, which we do currently at Oldbury Road, using private rented accommodation and using private shared accommodation, and then managing the accommodation ourselves direct. And what the options appraisal identified was that the most cost effective and efficient model for ending or significantly reducing the use of bed and breakfast accommodation is for us to manage accommodation in-house. So hence why we are taking Park Street back in-house, which is a property that we own, so there are no additional costs to that, and why we'll be leasing safe houses from Platform. We've negotiated a discount on that lease, and we've acquired Sheffield Close again to manage it in-house. So the private rented arrangement that lots of local authorities have, and that we do have with some providers, is certainly more cost effective than breakfast, but we've identified that this model is more effective
I think it depends if you was dealing with individual landlords, cost of it would be definitely different. I understand where you're coming from when it comes to maintenance, but I've come across with others, like I said, I went to other cities. They have different arrangements with different landlords, where some landlords has took responsibility for maintenance, which is lot less than if they were doing calling certain companies like handymans they use for residential properties. It definitely will be still worthwhile looking into this leasing, because Birmingham, I've been to that, they've doing leases, Coventry's doing leases, Walsall's doing leases, there's loads of other cities doing it. So obviously it's got to be a better effect taking this, because otherwise they won't be doing it.
Thank you, Chair. My question was surrounding the EPCs of these properties. Is that something the minimum energy requirements are looked into? Because there are rogue landlords in Worcester that are either not having EPCs or not meeting the minimum requirements.
So in terms of the city lettings properties that we work with landlords, yeah, so before we take the property on, we do a full inspection. It has to meet minimum, obviously it has to meet legal standards in terms of the condition, and it has to meet these standards, as well as a number of other things in terms of various different things. But yeah, one of the key priorities for the scheme was to drive up standards in private city. So, you know, it certainly achieved that in terms of reviews.
One question then, or two questions. So I just wondered, how exactly do we work with landlords to prevent homelessness in Worcester? Is Worcester Municipal Housing one of the landlords that we do work with?
So we currently have arrangements in place with social landlords, so with registered providers, particularly Platform, our largest registered provider in the city, whereby they will notify us whether they're seeking possession or intending to seek possession, whether that's for rent arrears, social behaviour, property condition. They will notify us at a relatively early stage to give us an opportunity to intervene. We will get in touch with the tenant to overcome whatever issue is threatening the tenancy, and aim to prevent that homelessness. That might mean negotiating provider, it might mean enabling them to access benefit income, setting up a payment plan, support with them, various different things. So that's what we currently do with registered providers. We'd like to expand that, as I said, but rented as well, because that is a significant factor in the number of homeless approaches that we receive. In terms of Worcester Municipal Housing, so we work with them in terms of referrals in, but we also have a fortnightly move-on meeting with a range of different supported accommodation providers, Worcester Municipal and CAB Move being one of them, where any issues would be identified at that meeting, and if that we can intervene and prevent issues from there, we will do so.
Okay, just presumably you can't discuss individual cases at those meetings. Whatever you talk about is more broad than that.
No, so we have an information sharing. So yeah, we literally sit and talk about individuals who need to move on from that supported accommodation where they're ready, or where that tenancy is threatened.
Great. Excuse me, sorry, Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Just for a bit of clarity there, you look at the homelessness, likely of homelessness with our providers, but we be unaware of anybody in the private rented sector until they perhaps were on the brink, if they didn't come forward themselves, or perhaps citizens' advice would bring. That's the case. So those are the ones that could really catch us unawares.
No more questions. And just before we go to that, I know Rosie in particular worked really hard to keep what we have and keep the scheme going. But as you said, pandemic, cost of living, and so on and so on. It just seemed destined that we needed to do something different, hence what we have in front of us tonight. We need to do things differently. So, yes, the recommendations in front of us. Sorry, thank you again, Rosie, for the report. Sadly, to approve the discontinuation of the Worcester City letting scheme, given the reasons we've just heard, and to note the arrangement set out within the report that will ensure that nonetheless tenants of the remaining Worcester City lettings properties are fully supported by this. So before we move to a vote on those, can I again ask for a proposer? And a seconder? Lawrence. So all those in favour of the two recommendations?
Yes, confirm that.
I think we're on the home straight now. 6-month update report on Worcester City's housing enabling strategy for the next 3 years. And that's Tom, of course it is. Thank you, Tom.
Chair. Yeah, this is an information report to provide a 6-monthly update on the delivery of the housing enabling strategy. So the committee received a report back in March this year where it was approved the recommendation to adopt a housing enabling strategy in the city, alongside the allocation of funding to recruit a new post of affordable housing delivery manager for an initial 2-year period. And we have James with us here tonight, who is our new affordable housing delivery manager. So this report is the 6-monthly update to provide an update against the 8 strategic goals which are outlined within the strategy and delivery plan. Although there haven't been any new affordable housing completions within the first 2 quarters within the city boundary, 2 large sites of Bromyard Road and Broomhall Way, where we expected delivery in Q1 and Q2 this year, have been delayed. So there's been a number of reasons for that, including construction delays from contractors, build programme changes, contractual and legal delays, problems with supply and materials and labour, as well as highway works required to re-engineer road surfacing. 30 properties have since been handed over across those sites during Q3, so over the past month. They've slipped slightly into the 3rd quarter, but we are anticipating 60 additional properties to be delivered across that site by the end of the financial year. Both Bromyard Road and Broomhall Way, they're large sites within the city, and Homes England funding's enabled the sites to come forward as 100% really positive news for those sites within the until the end of Q2, 54 properties have been delivered across the urban extension sites, and a total of 111 properties forecast to be delivered across those sites by the end of the financial year. The most up-to-date pipeline forecast which we received today from our RP partners is that we anticipate that 211 affordable housing completions will be delivered on sites across Worcester City and the urban extension sites within this financial year, and that's split 100 within Worcester, 11 across the urban extension sites. It is a changing picture, so we do get regular updates from the delivery partners, and it does shift sometimes. It's a higher figure depending on programmes are progressing. So a key area that was identified through the ARC review, which led to the development of the housing enabling strategy, for us to be able to deliver on the strategy, was the need to review our resource structure of our housing enabling function. In addition to our existing housing enabling officer, we recruited to a new post of affordable housing delivery manager, and James started with us in third goal, strategic goal within the strategy surrounding the importance of featuring affordable housing as a key strategic priority, and providing a golden thread throughout key policy documents and strategies across the organisation. Cross-council affordable housing delivery group has been established. That's been meeting monthly. It's made up from representatives from across the authority, and it's used for a number of purposes, including sites, looking at council assets, identifying collaborative ways that we're able to unlock and progress delivery. That's something that wasn't happening previously and has been really useful moving forward. We've also established a registered provider liaison group which meets quarterly, as well as holding individual liaison meetings both at a strategic and an operational level with providers. We've found it's been useful to share collaboratively with providers in a group setting, but often, particularly around development, providers don't want to share their plans or thoughts. So we have those liaison meetings as well. So we've been able to share our priorities around the delivery of affordable housing with our registered provider partners, as well as better understanding the barriers to increase provision and development in the city. So we knew some of that anyway, but we've sort of delved deeper and got a much better understanding of each individual registered providers' perspectives on development in the city. What we've picked up is that a key issue which we're acutely aware of is the lack of a land availability, particularly within the city boundary. The scale of sites that are available, as well as their complexity, can be a barrier for some providers. There's high levels of competition in the city, particularly with private developers, and there are challenges, operational challenges around the management of high density and high-rise development. And we also picked up a common theme around registered providers' risk appetite to engaging in development. Regular meetings are also held with officers from across the authority, with DLUHC and Homes England. We've been focusing on how we can maximise grants and funding within the city. So we've been able to articulate our concerns and challenges around shortfalls in the delivery of affordable housing, and that's been recognised by Homes England, who identified Worcester as a priority delivery area for the Affordable Homes programme, and they're supporting us also, working directly and speaking with their contacts at registered providers to look at opportunities for increasing delivery. We're looking at other opportunities for funding, so that includes other government grant programmes such as the Single Homeless Accommodation Programme. We recently secured just over £1 million from the Local Authority Housing Fund for delivery of 11 units of accommodation, which we're anticipating to be delivered financial year, as well as meeting with individual investors around particular individual development sites. Goal 6 surrounds the promotion of benefits of affordable housing in the wider socio-economic climate. So proactive steps have been taken to directly engage with key stakeholders involved in the delivery of affordable housing. That include registered providers, developers, as well as wider partners to try and highlight the wider benefits of good quality, affordable, on wider outcomes such as prolonged independent living, as well as tackling inequality and deprivation. Actions included within this goal surrounded the development of a communication strategy and market engagement hub for stakeholders, so we're able to market affordable housing in the city. So we've yet to progress this, but it's forward. We've had initial discussions around land promotion and spoken with registered providers who have indicated a potential interest in council playing a role in. There are limitations around land availability within the city, and registered providers generally have provided preference for larger development opportunities to benefit from economic scale. So we've been looking at how we might be able to identify alternative opportunities in the absence of those large sites by packaging up pieces of land. They use garage sites. Great. We do need to sort of further consider position in terms of land promotion and whether that involves any of our finances. In addition to land promotion, we've been looking at joint ventures. So it's something which we've had initial discussions about registered providers and developers, and what our role might be. So whether that is around land acquisition, site appraisals of land, and essentially a lot of it seems to be, the fact we've had is around opportunities to reduce. So I suppose in summary, a key area of focus has been in getting the right resources in the right places to be able to deliver the strategy. Delivery of affordable housing isn't overnight. Very much the foundation right, the environment's right. Affordable housing. Attached to with the report as Appendix 1 is just an update on what's been.
Very much, Tom. Yeah, this report is simply for noting, but all the same, still invite contributions, questions. At the time. Councillor Cooper. Sorry, excuse me, Councillor. Hey. Amos, you looking poised there? Nope. Nope. Okay. So, Councillor Petrovsky, Cooper, and Norfolk. Councillor Petrovsky first.
Thank you very much, and James, welcome to your new post. Congratulations. Just a quick question on goal number 7 and 7A. Considering that Worcester is a city with finite city boundaries and the land is theirs, some of it is reachable by boat only when the Severn decides to flood. I was wondering about this, the scoping event to establish the land promotions. What kind of land? Is it kind of regeneration scheme, used sites? What do you have in mind? If you or Tom would be able to give us a taste of what
Well, obviously, land resources are scarce, and I think the other, I mean, there are sites currently on the market. They tend to be of a certain type. They tend to be apartment-based sites, some of which where the developer or the landowner is looking to load the site. That doesn't necessarily fit what we necessarily need for social rented housing, for example. We're perhaps looking for more family housing. However, there are opportunities for, say, for example, build to rent or some form of shared ownership model which will take the pressure off the private rented sector, which is where we're having a lot of the demand coming from social housing, as the private rented sector tends to be shrinking. So it's looking more opportunistically at those particular sites we've got. In terms of the sites we do look at, you're right, there's not a lot got to a certain extent, but I mean, I think it's where we're looking at the sort of, I suppose, the express looking to make best use of what we do have in terms of what we do. We need larger family homes. Do we need environmentally very exemplar type homes in the small little sites we've got? So they are exemplar schemes. We do have the benefit of the urban extension sites and access to those urban extension sites. So in terms of our general sort of numbers coming through, comparatively, I would say Worcester is not particularly below the curve. I think obviously we are challenged in terms of the sites we've got available to ourselves. So I think maybe it's about looking at quality, bespoke, where we're looking at particular needs, and also looking at alternative options for the brownfield sort of apartment type sites where the landowner is looking to offload.
Thank you very much, James. I just a query then, if I may. So under goal 7, you've got 7A and 7B goes on to say to explore the options with registered provider liaison group. In my mind, this kind of discussion should be happening-ish because people involved in scoping will be the same people you talk to when and the registered cards on the table. I work for a social provider, same job. There would be sort of key people to have around the table. So my suggestion is it sort of, would it make sense to look at 7B start date pushed earlier, have this sooner rather than?
I'm not sure of the timetables and why that was decided. I mean, obviously we're having discussions with registered providers now, and it's getting a feel of what their priorities are, because obviously we can't control registered providers' priorities. So we are, first stage for us is, we are fixed in terms of the site essentially on the market. We have we need to match that with the appropriate registered providers interested with some of the market sites, 40 odd units to buy off Section 106. Some want to do land-led sites, side of the border, that's fine, that's great, but in terms we need to do that sort of process. So in terms of the timeline, I think Tom is probably better off.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timeline that was set as part of the delivery plan was, I mean, it was undertaken some time ago now, and I think where we felt we would be in a position to be able to enter into those discussions. I mean, what we anticipate doing is revising the 12 months where we are, because a number of the actions within the delivery plan are things that we wouldn't be forward any longer, and there's things which we've identified through the work that we've undertaken today, which clearly we need. That really answers your question.
Yes, I think I suppose my only sort of area of vagueness around this is I think from the social housing point of view, there is the off-the-shelf Section 106 stuff that goes into got more and more for all kinds of reasons, including environmental concerns. Housing providers who look at buying land exactly when those conversations should be happening. Therefore, my query about moving, establishing this registered provider liaison group sooner rather than later would make sense. That is all I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you all. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. My question is surrounding empty homes. I'm surprised it wasn't on the report. I can think of quite a few empty homes within Arboretum, which is my ward. I just wondered if we are aware of the empty homes, how many they are, and how they can be put back into use, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a separate area of work, and I suppose it directly correlates to the affordable delivery of affordable help. It would help to address some of the wider sort of. In terms of numbers, I'd have to come back to you to provide details on that. But it is something that we're really conscious of. We do look at figures. We do send out correspondence to owners or landlords of empty homes. We do work to try and bring those back into provide further details.
Councillor Norfolk.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one about Objective 1E with the Shrub Hill development site and the work with the County Council. We'll just have a quick summary about how those are proceeding. I mean, I know Shrub Hill development plan is going to be a long-term project. It's obviously a very short-term need for affordable housing.
Chair, the council's officer lead on that one is Kevin Moore, our property manager. So I know Kevin meets regularly with county colleagues and other colleagues on that site. But Kevin would be better placed to comment on that one if you don't mind, Councillor Norfolk. And again, we could provide a short written update following this meeting to committee.
Any further questions? Yes, so thanks again for the report, Tom. I'm not quite sure who would answer this one. Sorry, I know you're brand new, I'm letting you off. Yeah, there's a target, if I've read correctly, there's of 1,100 affordable homes being built within the next 3 years. Within 2023 to 2024, 360 homes, but no new affordable homes were built in the first 2 quarters for reasons beyond the council's control. And then the target has been revised, and it said 219 will be completed in 2023. So that 360 target, really null and void. It's now 219. So the question, first part of the question is, how confident are you that the target of 1,100 homes will be achieved by 2026? And how can this council mitigate against external factors such as those detailed in 3.4 so that we do build those affordable houses that we all want to see?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenging target, and we knew that when we set it, but what we didn't want to do is to set a too low box and say that we've met the target. It is based on some extent what we forecast, what we know is potential pipeline. So I think in terms of being able to affordable homes, there is a realistic prospect of that. But it's something, again, where I think realistically we need to review that year on year as we can see what the pipeline looks like. Beyond a year or two, it does get a lot more what might come delivered. In terms of the current year's target, again, we knew that was always going to be ambitious. The delivery last year was significantly lower than that, and we knew that there were some sites that were they have been hit by delays. So had the delays not happened, several hundred homes first couple of quarters of the year closer to that target, but realistically, we're unlikely to reach that 300 home target within it. I think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, the delivery for quickly. So if things haven't been approved now, it won't be physically livable within a year or two time. So there is a thing those properties coming forward. And I think a key focus really is getting right, making sure that we've got a much more systematic approach to. We're in a much stronger position, certainly moving into the future. Those numbers.
Thank you. I mean, building a house is obviously complicated. My concern is that what you just said about if things aren't in place now, then they're not going to be in place in a few years' time. The concern is that in 6 months' time, when we discuss again, the figures in terms of affordable housing won't have gone up the degree that we'd all like to see. So, whilst there are external factors we're having to deal with, I wouldn't want that to be the fallback position whenever one of us queries it. So, well, why have we not built X amount of houses? Well, it's because of A, B, C, and it's just beyond our control. I wouldn't want to have that conversation all over again, personally, particularly as homelessness has been a theme throughout this meeting, theme in the national headlines. So I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, I just obviously want to see progress like everyone else.
Yeah, good idea, Chair. I think it's important to, at the moment, one of the reasons for the ARC report and the enabling strategy and my appointment is because previously the council has been very reliant on private sector delivery aside from potentially the swimming pool side. So when you're reliant on house builder delivery and the Section 106 coming off that house builder delivery, you are beholden to external events, construction inflation, house builder slowdowns, whatever. So I think the idea of, well, one of the main focuses of this approach for the council to take more control of an element of the programme so that we are more masters of our own destiny, so we can control the timeline. We are obviously going to be still reliant on the house building and the Section 106 side because that is still, across nationally, that's still the biggest way that affordable housing is delivered. But, we can get our own control, own sites. We can start to be a bit more proactive in terms of site identification and finding partners to deliver. Then we have more control outside of, do a great job, but they've got their own priorities and our targets are not their priorities. So I think that's one of the main drivers for this role and this strategy.
Excuse me, Councillor Norfolk.
And perhaps further to informing this committee about progress, one of the KPIs for the PED committee is the number of affordable housing plans. It might be, I don't know, the art of the possible, sharing that KPI with you. Lloyd?
Thank you all. Well, this is to be noted, and it is impossible not to note. Take it that we have noted it and had a good discussion about it very late in the evening. I'll bring that item to a close. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Tom. I've already forgotten your name. James, excuse me. Thank you, James. Welcome. One item for AOB, which is the Q2 performance report for 23-24, and Lloyd is going to lead on that one.
Chair, given the hour and the fact my computer decided to reboot, we are happy to take this report as read, but also
I haven't myself noticed anything glaring in there, but Councillor Petrovski's hand up. Anyone else? Any questions, comments on the performance report? Super. 3 there. Okay.
Thank you very much again, Chair. So I think I might have raised it in a different committee. My suggestion would be to start with the scorecards and the performance report overview at the beginning of the meeting. And the reason for that is, for us sitting here in the committee, we are supposed to be provided with a high sort of level overview and summary. I think if we start with that and then perhaps focus on other agenda items, our job of sort of looking at the high level overview is done and dusted, whereas some of the more detailed discussions that we are having can perhaps wait or be rushed by the chair. The reason I think it's important is that in some areas of the performance scorecard, there are some red KPIs where we don't see, for all kinds of reasons, we don't seem to be hitting the target. I think it's useful to explode those and probe those again, just to give a taste and feeling for how we're doing as a local authority in overall. So, and just to give you an example, I noticed something on page 102 where the current value of 31.5%, and this is about percentage of people who approach us as homeless, where main housing duty is owed towards them due to their homelessness not being able to be prevented or relieved. There's either a mistake or there's something not quite right. Current value is 35.1. Current target is 25%. We are overachieving, and this is so. Is that a mistake, or? And then, you know, I can go on in the sense that, for instance, Rosie was here. We talked about the private rent sector. It would be fantastic to have someone like her here to give us a bit more taste of why the private sector housing team, which enforces the standards of those properties, seems underachieving, I suppose. So, you know, the value is not that. It could be the time, or it could be some other factors. I think the main point is, I would suggest to focus on this at the beginning of the meeting, agenda, and therefore give us a chance to probe, have an overview, and then probe.
Thank you, Councillor. This is the discussion we had. Rejigging the order. We did have a natter about this one, and rambling around for the reasons why we stuck with the traditional order of things. Probably because of fatigue. Help me out here or not?
There's different approaches, Chair, and ultimately how the agenda set is one for the Chair and Vice Chair. So we can absolutely, you know, as part of committee agenda planning meetings, we can discuss that. I think generally what we try and do is put the decision items up first, because perhaps from an officer point of view, we tend to think they are more important because there are decisions to be made, and we tend to put the information items second latter. But again, you know, in Chair and Vice Chair's hands as to how the agenda plays out. So I'm sure we can take that conversation away.
Yeah. We'll have to resume that conversation because I can hear you, but I can also see that point of view as well. So yeah, watch this space on that one if that's okay. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. When I first came into this committee, I was alarmed to see the amount of families in B&Bs over 6 weeks, and I'm absolutely delighted to see that it's gone down. So I'd like to thank the officers.
Thank you very much, Grant. And Councillor Teixeira.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question on the point of HMOs. So is there a figure that, unless I'm missing it, that tells how many HMOs there are in the city of Worcester and how many of where they are, and what is the review plan for those? Is that information that we can have rather than just a snapshot?
I think what this is, Chair, is a performance report. So this is trying to show performance. We do know the number of HMOs that are licensed, and that's the, you know, that's the sort of information that we can provide members on an individual basis, or again we can send a follow-up note to.
Thank you. Check for questions on the Q2 performance report. Once again, simply, unless there are any further questions, comments, we're noting the Q2 performance report. Thank you very much. I haven't received any items for any other business, so we can all go to bed now. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everyone.